Hey guys, welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're gearing up for part 1 of your CMA exam, specifically the Financial Planning, Performance, and Analytics section, you already know that cost management is a massive chunk of your score. I've taught this material for years, and I know costing systems can sometimes feel like this incredibly steep mountain of rules and journal entries. But as your teacher, I promise you, once you understand the core logic behind it, it absolutely clicks. My goal for this explainer is to make sure you completely master job order costing so you literally never miss a question on the exam.
Okay, let's dive into this. Today we're going to cover the big picture, the 3 core product costs, mastering the POHR formula, fixing end-of-year variances, and finally, your exam strategy.
All right, section 1, the big picture. Before we get bogged down in the heavy math, we need to understand how companies actually track costs. And what's really interesting here is the stark contrast. If you're a factory pumping out millions of identical cans of soda, you're going to use something called process costing, where all those costs are just averaged out. But we aren't talking about soda cans today. If you're a construction company building a custom skyscraper or a manufacturer building a totally custom yacht, you use job order costing. Job order costing is specifically designed for when a product or service is unique, distinct, and easily identifiable. Since these jobs are so unique, they require specialized tracking. To track these custom jobs, every single project gets its own specific document. We call this the job cost sheet. Think of it like a dedicated folder where we just pile up all the core costs associated with making that specific item. Every single yacht, skyscraper, or even a custom lawsuit gets its very own job cost sheet. Moving right along to section 2, the 3 core product costs. So what exactly gets loaded onto that sheet? Well, we have 3 core buckets. First, we have direct materials, or DM. These are the raw materials that can be directly and easily traced to your specific job. Going back to our custom yacht analogy, the fiberglass and the engine are direct materials. We track them super efficiently using a materials requisition form. Second, we have direct labor, or DL. This is the hands-on labor. You know, the carpenters and welders physically shaping that yacht. We track their hours using time tickets. And then we have the third bucket, manufacturing overhead. Now let me lean in here and give you a warning from my years of teaching this. Manufacturing overhead, or MOH, is where the examiner absolutely loves to test you. Why? Because MOH includes all the indirect costs of running the factory. We're talking about factory rent, electricity, depreciation on the machines, the supervisor's salary. You cannot easily trace how many cents of the factory's electricity bill went into one specific yacht. It's literally impossible. So because we can't easily trace it, we have to allocate it.
Which brings us to section 3, mastering the POHR formula.
So how do we actually allocate that tricky indirect cost? I really need you to focus here because this is the absolute heart of the CMA exam on this topic. It's the most important mathematical concept you're going to learn in this explainer. Here is the formula. POHR equals the estimated total manufacturing overhead costs divided by the estimated total allocation base. Let's break this down. Because we don't know the actual cost of our electricity or rent until the end of the year when the bills finally arrive, we have to calculate this rate before the year even begins. We take our best estimate of all overhead costs and divide it by an estimated allocation base, which is usually something like direct labor hours or machine hours. Don't worry, the exam question will always tell you what base the company uses.
Let's move to the next step and see how this builds. Once you calculate that POHR rate at the beginning of the year, you apply it to a job as you're actively working on it. The formula for applied overhead is your POHR multiplied by the actual activity of the base used for that specific job.
Okay, let's make this totally concrete with a practice problem. Imagine our company is looking at the upcoming year. We sit down and estimate that our total manufacturing overhead costs, all that rent and electricity, will be exactly $100,000.
Alongside those dollars, we also need to estimate our activity. We estimate that our workers will put in a total of 20,000 direct labor hours over the entire year. This is our estimated allocation base. Now, we just do the simple math to find our rate. We take that $100,000 of estimated overhead, divide it by our 20,000 estimated direct labor hours, and boom, that gives us a predetermined overhead rate of $5 per direct labor hour. That $5 rate, it's locked in for the year. Fast forward a few months, we're in the factory, and we just finished working on a specific custom order, Job 101. We look at the time tickets for Job 101, and we see that it required exactly 50 actual hours of direct labor.
To figure out how much overhead belongs on Job 101's cost sheet, we just apply our rate. We multiply our locked-in $5 rate by the 50 actual hours worked on that job. 5 times 50 gives us $250 of applied overhead for Job 101. See how easy the math becomes when you break it down step by step?
Look, if you take away just one single memory from this entire explainer, I want it to be this golden rule right here. Always use estimated numbers to find the rate and actual numbers to apply it to the job. Seriously, say it out loud with me if you have to. Estimated to find it, actual to apply it. That is your secret weapon to never getting tricked on test day.
All right, Section 4, Fixing End-of-Year Variances.
In the real world, things are rarely perfect. The applied overhead almost never perfectly matches your actual physical bills because, unfortunately, utility companies do not care about your estimates. And this brilliantly illustrates the two scenarios you're going to encounter on the exam when those numbers don't match. This matrix right here is your best friend. First, if your actual overhead is greater than your applied overhead, you have under-applied overhead. That just means we didn't charge enough to our jobs over the year. To fix it, we have to increase our cost of goods sold, or COGS. Conversely, if your applied overhead is greater than your actual overhead, you have over-applied overhead. We charged way too much. So to fix the variance, we have to decrease COGS. Remember, on the CMA exam, if the variance is relatively small in a material, we always close it directly out to COGS, exactly like this matrix shows.
Finally, Section 5, Final Exam Strategy.
So, the crucial point is knowing exactly what structural steps to take when you sit down at that testing terminal. Take a deep breath and just follow this sequence. Step 1. Identify the direct materials and direct labor given in the problem for that specific job. Step 2. Calculate your POHR using the estimated yearly totals they give you. Step 3. Multiply that POHR by the actual base used for that specific job to get your applied overhead. And finally, Step 4. Add those three components together, materials, labor, and applied overhead, and you've got the total cost of the job. It is a totally systematic process, and if you stick to it, you literally cannot fail.
You are now fully equipped to crush job order costing. But what happens when a company produces millions of identical items and we literally can't trace anything to a specific job? How does process costing twist these rules entirely upside down? Well, we'll tackle that mystery in our next explainer. Go practice a few POHR multiple choice questions tonight while this is fresh. Keep studying hard, and I'll see you then.